What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Sunday Slaughter podcast. And today I'm joined by my regular co-host, Charles. What's going on, man?
Not much, fellas. What's happening, everybody?
It's been a minute, but we've also got Lord Commander Bob in the house. How's it going, Bob?
Good. Yeah, I made a brief appearance a couple weeks ago, but I haven't been here for a whole show yet. Happy to be here.
And then we have a very special guest. We have Alex, otherwise known as BoaredtoDeath. You may recognize his name throughout Discord. I see him post a lot in Dragonstone. Another loyal Baratheon player. It's weird how we seem to attract Baratheon players on this podcast, but very happy to have you here today, Alex. How's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. And it sounds like you just attract masochists, but that's okay.
It seems to be true. It does seem to be true. Today's podcast, we are going to talk about the Gamers Haven 22-player tournament that just wrapped last weekend. Before we get into that, typically we like just to go over any kind of news that we'd like to touch upon, anything that has happened within the community, any news drops that's happened from CMON. On top of the list that I have here is the alternative list building suggestion from CMON. So, Charles?
It was largely irrelevant. That's what my observation was. Is that, like, I looked at my lists for Free Folk, and they were all basically legal, so it didn't matter. And then I looked at the way most of the game was played. It didn't super matter. It really limited Mother of Dragons and some other builds into bad builds, and didn't affect Night's Watch at all. Therefore, it didn't matter. And then we realized that the format for 40 points and 50 points was actually like 42 points and like 56 points or something silly, which raised the question of why, question mark. But then I also realized it still didn't matter because it was an optional format and most people didn't respond super well to it that I talked to, and that we weren't going to play it much. So, like, I was mostly okay with it because it was new stuff from CMON in any capacity, which I take as a positive on some level, even if it's not content meant for me, and how I consume the game. But at the same time, I didn't quite understand its purpose fully either. But that also just didn't matter because I was like, well, this doesn't matter. It's not for me, and that's okay. And then I quickly moved on from it.
How about you, Bob? While you maybe give your thoughts, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up the army construction variant here while you talk about your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm the complete opposite. I think it's really freaking cool. I think it's a nice spin on the game. I think it's something that is going to limit some of the list builds, such as the 3 NCU builds. I've never been a huge fan, but of 3 NCUs, but I've always just run it because that's what's been optimal. There has been some 2 NCU lists that have been successful. You'll see a couple from the Gamers Haven tournament that we had that had some success as well. But I just think it's pretty cool. I think maybe the next Sunday Slaughter tournament should be with that list building format. Wink, wink.
Yeah,
No.
so like you mentioned, like it limits 3 NCUs, but like I literally just don't see how other than the 5-point NCUs. But
Right, yeah.
it goes back to just me being like, it's just not for me, and that's okay, really, right? Like you and I both have had this conversation on the podcast, and I guess I'm kind of covering it before we get too far in the episode, before people get in our comments and say we're taking it easy on CMON again. Is that there is no wrong way to hobby. I don't have to like the way you play the game, and if I don't like it, I don't have to play with you. And vice versa, you don't have to play with me. So this type of content, like if people like you and your player base are excited for it, and you can run tournaments and people show up for it, like I'm gonna be the first on the record and say, go for it, roll dice and have a good time, right? Like, so I just wanted to cover that because some folks are just like, oh yeah, no, we just like to start shit in Discord, but like, you know, he didn't do it. All right, whatever. This is irrelevant to me, and you can do what you want with it, basically, right? Like, have a good time.
Before we get to, we'll definitely listen to what you had to say, Alex. But for those who who have never seen the document before, I'm just going to quickly go over it here, and I'm just going to talk about the medium game size. So the variant has the option for different types of points you can spend on your army. So the total for a medium-sized game is 46 points.
42, I think.
Oh,
I
42.
think it's
Okay.
42.
Yeah, so you have 26 combat unit points. You have attachment points, which are 4, and then you have or you have 4 attachment points, and then you have 4 non-combat unit points, and then you have what's called flex points, which can be spent on any of the prior 3 categories. Yeah. So now that we covered that, Alex, what do you think?
No, I was just going to say that Baratheon list building in general is kind of weird. You have an awkward points allotment in general when you're making a list with Baratheon. So like, all right, the NCU thing being gatekeeped out of 5-point NCUs for 3 NCU list. I've been running 3 NCU still with Baratheon, and it has a lot to do with the fact that if I lose that 3-point that third NCU, I'm usually just downgrading a unit to add a warden. So this format kind of forcing that on you to maybe then have 4 points to spend on a stag noble. It also kind of makes it hard to fit that in with, say, a unit of cavalry, which I feel like is kind of required this edition.
Right.
It's been actually a hard. I've tried playing with it, and I haven't made a list that actually satisfies me, with the exception of maybe fitting in Loris, expert duelist somewhere where I would never be able to fit him prior. And that's really the only way it's moved the
Yeah.
needle for me at all.
Yeah, and like to be clear too, for some listeners who don't play a lot of competitive Song, like Alex and I talk about competitive lists a fair bit in the Discord, right? Non-tournament lists is one thing, but when you're trying to play tournament lists, getting to kind of 8 is the magic number of activations right now. General consensus on the meta that will vary based on where you play and how you play. Let's cover that. But Baratheons, to get to that activation tier, is really reliant on solos, and a lot of factions are as well. That formatting really punishes factions that need solos to get to that level because they don't actually have enough units on the board to get attachments for the attachment points. If you have Dragonstone Nobles to get your activations up and you're trying to bring, because even if you don't bring 3 NCUs, you bring 2, it's actually hard for some lists to buy enough infantry to use the attachment points in a meaningful way. Because they don't necessarily have access to cavalry attachments, like you said, or they're trying to bring a solo to get their activations up. And that's one less unit slot, considering all commanders are on the field now. They take up one of your infantry attachment slots. So in some lists, several factions have a really hard time using the attachment points, and they get forced to just not take cavalry or not take their solos, and they have to buy what is in some cases underperforming infantry. So it just gets really awkward for some factions, while it just doesn't affect others.
Can I ask a question, guys? I was in a debate with someone, and I thought you had to take at least 4 points of attachments, and they were saying that that was a 0 to 4 range. Am I completely misreading the document?
I thought that it's a requirement.
I think
but
it is.
Me too. That's what I thought.
Yeah, which is one reason I like the format, is because right now we still see lists that don't have attachments. I ran one in the Gamers Haven tournament. My Queen of Marine list didn't have any attachments other than my commander. I think, and we do see that a lot, that we aren't seeing the benefit of adding these attachments to our lists. And I'm excited if we do a tournament or something like this. I'm excited to see those attachments and what they can actually do, because a lot of times we'd rather take an extra 4-point NCU rather than taking that 4 points in attachments that we could fit in. Because some factions don't have a 4-point unit to throw in, and I just think it'd be cool to see some of these attachments get some board time, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be cool. That's what I said. Like, it doesn't have to be great. It doesn't have to be tournament format all the time. If you can get a tournament going, it's good. Just play it. Just if you like it, play it.
personally, I don't have any extreme thoughts one way or another, just because I've yet to try it out. I definitely want to experiment on camera, maybe possibly have a future battle report sort of showcasing this new variant. Bob, I'm nominating you if you want to try it out with me.
Yeah.
But one thing that did concern me a little bit is one of the hot topics right now is Night's Watch, of course. And as much as I don't want to say it, Bob, that list, your Night's Watch list with 2 NCUs, the double crossbows with the watch captains, you can build that list within this variant. Like that's
Yep,
it's
and I
definitely
can add
insane.
a watch recruiter in each
Yeah, he
one
actually
of them.
has free attachment points.
Right, so I'd be able
It
to
actually
two
gets an
watch
upgrade in
recruiters.
some ways. It gets
Yep.
more healing. Like,
Which it's a bit concerning. But that definitely is maybe
But,
a
like-
conversation for another time.
but also, like, something we need to cover. We covered it in the Fabio podcast. Not every meta has a Night's Watch player, right? And things like that. So this, as much as I don't like the format, I will go on record and say official. I don't like the format. I've played it a lot, and currently the two factions I'm playing IRL with a splash of a third faction are Free Folk, Greyjoys, and a splash of Starks. All of my lists are basically legal in this format. For the record, this literally didn't change any of my tournament lists. If I played this format, I just gained 2 points of NTUs. So it's not even like, oh, they're taking away my favorite builds. My lists are completely legal. But it's that CMON has to make stuff for a variety of people, and I don't have to like it. And I'm gonna keep saying that because this is a conversation I had a lot after the last podcast with people, privately and publicly. And it's that it doesn't have to be for all of us. It just needs to be for hopefully a majority of people, and that majority can shift directions, right? You can have 45% casual players and capture 15% competitive players, and that's a majority of 55%. And vice versa, you can capture 40% of competitive players and 15% of casual or narrative players, and that's 55%. If they're hitting that goal and we're getting more frequent updates, we should at least consider it and check it out, right? And then be willing just to decide if it's for us or if it's not. And while this raises a lot of questions, we've talked on the ground in different places about the Night's Watch matchup, and with this list just doesn't affect them. If your club doesn't have a Night's Watch player, then no one's gonna care. Your MOD player is gonna get a little booty hurt, and that's fine. But tell him to play Barristan and double pikeman, and he'll have a great time. It'll be fine. It's fine.
Cool. I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to talk about regarding this army construction variant. So now let's get into what we really want to talk about, and that is the Gamers Haven tournament that just wrapped up last weekend. So Alex, you brought your Pittsburgh crew. I understand you guys have a very good gaming community out in your neck of the woods. You brought your crew into our territory. First off, when you saw the tournament being promoted, was it easy to sort of gather a crew to travel for something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I was thrilled. And for full context, I had actually just met Ian and those guys from Fabricators, and we had both in two smaller groups already decided to go to this tournament before we even met each other. So I think it says a lot about basically the people following the community in our area in this section of the Midwest that want to play and want to go to events, because the Pittsburgh group that came out actually met maybe 4 weeks prior in person at a local tournament and all talked about how we were all coming to this event. So yeah, I mean, that wasn't actually really that hard. There was no convincing. Everyone was so rearing, chomping at the bit to play in person and compete in person after a year in lockdown that, as soon as a reputable event like this came up with those, not to, bury the lead on restrictions, but that was actually a plus for a lot of people. So for me, at least, I know it definitely was. So that was actually just incentive. Here's a chance to really play the game and not feel held back. And it's going to be a high level.
And that's definitely something I want to touch upon, because I know that there was a little bit of controversy on Facebook when this event was promoted, because there were bans and restrictions. It's also been talked about by the stats guys. Bob, why don't you hop in here and just give a little background on why we decided to implement these bans and restrictions?
Yeah, sure. So it kind of started off at first talking to Chris and talking to Max, and Max hasn't really been playing the game too much, but I still like to get his input because he's been TO on a lot of our tournaments. And we were just looking at some of the things that were just too strong in our opinion, too strong, and what was causing people to not, I guess, it caused people to have more of a negative play experience, where you're just playing and someone could beat you, but they'd still say it's not fun for them. And we decided that things like Night's Watch, and at the time, the Red Cloaks charge, when it was ruled as 2 actions, which ended up being FAQ'd and errata'd. So I guess we were right on that one. But things like that, and then also like Mother Dragons, the Night's Watch captain. We left alone the Targaryens not watch captain and Sullied Officer Relentless, just because we didn't feel that it was as strong in Targaryens. But it came across from like everyone's like, oh well, what could we ban? Should we just ban Night's Watch altogether? And we're like, no, we can't do that because there's people who only own Night's Watch. Then we also had people say, oh well, just do this, and I literally had 6 people message me and say, just do this to Night's Watch and it's fine. And they were all completely different things that people messaged me. So I'm like, let's pick a few of these, see what happens. I'm a Night's Watch player. I own Night's Watch. And I know what I've run that people have basically just said, hey, that's not fun. And things that it's just so hard to beat. So some of the restrictions we did was Watch Captain Relentless was melee only. We actually banned Awful and John commanders, which we've seen from stats that John doesn't have that high of a rating out of all of the Night's Watch commanders. But I've run him and it's very strong. And what else did we do with Night's Watch? We said no Oathful NCU because I've had literally, I know he doesn't get much table time, but I've ran him multiple times, and everyone that I've played him against has been like, man, that's really not fun to play against. Probably took it a little too far with that. At some points, I was basically like, man, I wish we really didn't ban anything because it was just creating problems for a little while. So that's one of the things you have to be careful about when you're doing these bans. If you're going to do it, make sure you say it up front, well ahead of time before people join the tournament, and don't change anything. You can't change anything 2 weeks ahead of time. For instance, someone said, oh, well, if Relentless is melee only in Night's Watch, it should be in Targs. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. We probably should have done that, but it was too late. So everyone seemed to enjoy it, though. People, not one person that was there complained about what we restricted. It was really cool to see the outcome of the tournament and the other things that could be run by restricting these things, and how much I don't think anyone there said they had a bad play experience. I don't think there was one person. Everyone was able to compete in the games and have a chance without complaining about something being overpowered. I didn't hear that one time this entire tournament, and it was awesome.
I'll say this. I do understand when people say they don't agree with what we did. One way to look at it is it's our tournament, although it was local and we attracted a player base from surrounding states. I would consider it pretty high profile because of the amount of players that we had. So if we didn't implement a ban and Night's Watch won, that would speak volumes to how powerful or how poorly designed Night's Watch is. But my opinion is just for the health of our community, make sure that our players didn't walk away completely in a really bad disposition after losing to a list like that. One of our local players played against Bob. This was not in the tournament, but just a casual game. He said, I want to experience this Night's Watch list that everyone's talking about. And this player that played against Bob is the most fun opponent. He always takes things in stride. I always have a great time playing against him. And he messaged us and said, that was the first time I played this game, and it was completely PE.
And
He
that's
had no fun whatsoever. And that, I felt like, spoke volumes for me. Hearing him say that, that's the last thing I want players to experience when they came to the tournament was to say, like, oh man, this was the first tournament I went to, and then I had to play against that. You know, like for the health of the game, I felt like it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, and that list I ran against him wasn't even the most oppressive list that I've run. That's when he was having a bad time against awful NCU, and I remembered it, and I remember what it was like to play against Mel and not be able to do anything against it. I mean, you can't avoid a shot from the tactics board. It's impossible. Just like a stone thrower, you can't avoid the shot from a stone thrower. Obviously, we didn't ban stone throwers, but yeah, it's just that wasn't even one of the most oppressive lists that I've ran ever with Night's Watch, and he still didn't have fun with it because I still had the healing and I still had the awful NCU and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was. I didn't want this tournament to come across as playing against something that you knew you had no chance to beat. It's just not. It wouldn't have been as fun, and we wouldn't have. I don't think we would have had the enjoyment that we did have at the tournament.
Definitely hearing from Alex. Alex did mention that that was maybe one of the reasons why his crew decided to come down was because we implemented those bans. We also had ORJ Bill, who traveled from Detroit with a buddy of his. He told me straight up before the tournament started he would not have came unless we had some kind of ban regarding our Night's Watch. And then some of the guys from Buffalo that traveled down said the same thing as well. Are you saying, Alex?
No, I was actually going to say the same thing about ORJ Bill. My second game was against him, and that was a conversation we both had about how that kind of made the event for us. And I think it's crazy when you talk about all these different things that are being restricted. It's really two categories of things. It's stuff that's giving extra activation economy at a crazy low cost, or it's things that just kind of bypass the mechanics of the game, where you're cutting down on interactions. So I think there's just a really common theme of things that players aren't enjoying. This is happening to me, and I don't feel like I'm playing the game. It's just happening. Like mod just happens to you, right? Or it's things where, wow, I feel like I'm surrounded because you're getting 3-point activations. And so I think there's a common theme of things that players aren't enjoying, and that was the exact conversation that ORJ, Bill, and I had.
Yeah, 100% on that, on the activation economy and just bypassing stuff. And another comment too, like for people who listen to this who don't know who like ORJ Bill is, right? And then we get competitive players in general, not say the podcast, but we get a lot of comments about like, oh, we're not playing games, we're all playing a certain way, we're forcing a meta, so forth and so on, or the good Night's Watch is not that bad, or saying, oh, maybe they're just whatever players. For those who don't know ORJ Bill, he played neutrals and stuff competitively in the Stark 1.6 meta. He does not shy away from hard matchups and hard games, and the bans still mattered that much to him that he spoke out on it, right? Like, there are certain players that have been through the grind and, like, just face-checked what was considered a very toxic meta and stale meta for a very long time that feel that strongly or stronger about the current meta. So, to some degree, as, like, TOs, like in Bob's position, and things like you have to listen to those players to a degree because this is an educated opinion from a man like that, right? Or a person like that. It's not just a whimsical thing or a new guy who can't deal, right? These are seasoned veterans who are like, look, real talk, no one's going to show up. And you have to listen to that as a TO. And there's some flack from some community people and things like that. And to a degree, I agree. Like, I'm not a big on bans. I wouldn't have enjoyed that tournament as much as a hard fought victory, but doesn't mean I wouldn't have enjoyed my opponent's company. Like, if I lived there, I would have showed up for the camaraderie, right? To play the games and have fun and build community, whether it's my favorite format or not. And there is a point in time, as we mentioned in another podcast, is that you got to make your own fun. And if that's what it takes for your community to keep playing, some people's counterpoint is, well, if you got to change the game that much or homebrew the game that much, then why are we even playing the game? It's dead anyway. If you accept that defeat to a degree, that is one option. And the other option is, at least for a little while, experiment until things level out or Simon can respond and things like that. Like, they're two sides of the same coin. You can choose inaction and accept it for what it is and walk away, or you can choose action and try to coordinate things that are still fun, casual events or modified events. I'm not even going to call this event casual, because even if you put limitations on an event or you run like an ELO tournament, you can play it competitively. Like, I saw you guys' lists. I saw some of the games you guys played and the results. Players played that event hard, and it was an even field. They all had the same bans and restrictions they were aware of, and they showed up with the strongest lists they could build within that modified set of rules. That makes that event as competitive as anything else, because the players were playing competitively. Now, is it a different balance and a different meta? Absolutely. But that does not change the fact that if we all played Battleship instead of Song, that if we all played Try Hard Battleship, that is still a competitive event. And that's the thing people lose sight of, I think, when we have these conversations about ban lists, formatting, and tournaments. And I think you guys did a very good job about putting it out there in advance. You talk to your community members, you talk to people outside of your community and got their feedback as well. And you created a very uniform event that everyone agreed to, everyone came to the table, and they really came at it and played hard. And I think that at the end of the day adds up to a healthier meta than just, suck it up and deal, play the rules or whatever, right? In some cases. And I applaud that effort and that energy and what you guys pulled off in that event. And I was super jealous that there was nothing like that in my area that I could get to, because I'm still stuck in basically quarantine land here in the deep south. So I think you guys did a very good job of that. And I think I just want to speak to that, and that there's a lot of ways to look at this in the bans, and you just got to make it happen sometimes, basically, is my point.
Well, next tournament, we would love to have you, because unfortunately, we did not have any free folk players at this
Dude,
tournament.
no one's had any free folk. It's not just you. Even the TTS leagues have not had free folk players. Like, I think, and it's funny, right? Because like, it's not 100% true. Because like Psychopath, I think, out of Germany is playing a decent bit of free folk, but like he's also playing Greyjoys and events. So it's free folk were rare before. It's even more rare. And to be honest, since they changed the tactics deck, free folk are pretty fun to play. There's certain things that just will never see the table because there's a lot of other balance issues with the faction. But like, the lists we have are fun to pilot. So it is a little surprising that they are, even to the degree of more rare they are, is pretty surprising.
I've been flirting with them. I've been like looking for starters secondhand. I don't know. I think the fact that I'm not seeing them anywhere makes me want to be the person that brings them.
I played them in the TSL, and I wasn't in the most competitive bracket. No offense to those guys. A lot of us played just fun lists and stuff. A lot of guys were just like, we're gonna just kick back, first event of the new format, of the new edition, and just played some games. We had a good time. I only lost on Night's Watch and Fire and Blood, and I barely lost, right? And Free Folk had game into. I won my other matches, so I had game into them, right? And I was firmly in control. If you know what you're doing with Free Folk, they play very much like Greyjoys, the more aggressive Greyjoy lists, and like Old Stark lists. So if you're comfortable in those play styles, Free Folk will be fine for you, really. But like, they got gas, they really do. And honestly, in the form of There's Too Many, they've got their own NPE for players because the panic spike is so massive sometimes.
I think Bob and I can both agree. We've talked about it before. We don't think folk is that bad either. They're just it's like a big brain faction that I can't really wrap my head around yet.
Yeah, they're not even that big brain, honestly. Once you start playing them, you'll realize that they're pretty linear. But yeah, like, it's like I said, they play a lot like Greyjoys, and I think that's part of the problem, is that people were really excited for Greyjoys, and they realize they're very similar lists, so they're just playing Greyjoys because they're new.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, when we say big brain, I think it is more so like you have to do everything perfectly with them to coordinate. I mean, in quote, like, pardon the pun, coordination tactics. You have to really plan things ahead of time more than the other factions, in my opinion.
Yeah, a bit.
Um,
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's probably right. And I mean, honestly, though, that's kind of how it was before, right? N6 Band was not as easy to play as people thought it was. You had to plan your collapse, which was really weird to do in a game like this. You had to plan how you were going to lose until you won. But like that hasn't changed too much. That's still kind of how it works with Free Folk.
All right, so we're talking about Free Folk, and they didn't even make it into the tournament. So I just want to quickly just give my impressions looking at stats right now and all the people that signed up. We still had a fairly healthy spread of what was brought, even though Night's Watch had bans and restrictions. We still saw, was it 2 or 3 players that still brought Night's Watch?
I think it was
2.
2. Yes.
At 2. We also had quite a few Lannisters, Baratheons, and Targaryens, and actually a few Starks too. We mentioned ORJ Bill, who placed really high, considering that he took a faction that isn't considered that strong right now in this meta. Definitely want to go over each of our lists that played in the tournament, and maybe just go over how our day went. Let's start off with you, Alex. Let's talk about, firstly, lists, and maybe go into some of the reasons why you decided to bring those commanders and those units, and then let's talk about how your games played out.
Sure. So Baratheon, in my opinion, only has maybe like 2.5 builds that they should really bring to tournaments, and those are the 2 biggest commanders we have right now are Loras Tyrell and Stannis the One True King. And so my first list was Stannis the One True King and a unit of Wardens, and immediately right there I'm thinking Icy Honed and Ready on the list of events, and I want my commander sitting on a point but with a 3+ armor. And then I'm bringing the R'hllor Faithful, R'hllor Lightbringers, Bolton Flayedmen, Selyse and Shireen, Davos NCU, and Tycho Nestoris. Basically, never leave home without Tycho Nestoris unless you play Free Folk. Honestly, never leave home without Flayedmen unless you play Free Folk. But in that list, the best thing Baratheon can kind of do is generate passive hits, and R'hllor Faithful kind of bring that with their faith ability. They also kind of bring some action economy. When they do eventually die, creating a free attack is huge for Baratheon, and it kind of helps you get that 7 out of Lightbringers. And Flayed Men with Ours is the Fury is just the one truly OP thing that we have access to. But I really enjoy when I'm in situations with Flayed Men and I charge into a unit and I get to take the swords and put Selyse and Shireen on Flayed Men, shoot into the engagement, -3/+1 panic test, and if Flayed Men pass at 5, it's another auto wound. It's been a really fun to like clear off elite units that way. The other list was Loras Tyrell in Rose Knights, alongside Rose Knights with Dario, because he kind of procs their heal and deal. You actually kind of want to take those wounds on 1 to get precision and critical blow. A unit of Hedge Knights with Glory Seeker, and then just a Baratheon Warden with Penrose, Tycho, who you never leave without, and Eldon Estermont. And you really need Eldon in a Loras list because you're basically driving everything to get Overgrowth. The whole list is designed around generating passive hits, where you're putting Werewoods down, you're feeding for Overgrowth, you're putting it on your Rose Knights, and they're restoring ranks through the heal spamming. And if they are attacked while sitting on nodes, they're generating 4 hits, and then they're healing and dealing auto wounds. It's kind of a way of bypassing Hardened, bypassing Disrupt, dealing with Counter-Strike. It's passive hits, I think, are the way for Baratheon to win right now. Should I go into my games? I'm just not sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, definitely.
Okay. So game 1 was Honed and Ready, which is probably my favorite mode. That and Clash of Kings are my 2 favorite modes right now. Against a Stark player. And it was a smooth game, and it was definitely someone who's a newer player that I was kind of coaching up along the way. And I think that's something to call out when you're at tournaments. Like, if you do have a newer player in the first round, don't give them the win. It is a competitive environment, but don't shoot to kill either. Like, try and help remind them of their triggers once you know you have the game in hand. But he was a great guy. We had a really good time talking together. He gave me his Night's Watch ruler, just so I got a second ruler out of it. Awesome guy. And I think he came out of it learning a little bit more about his units too. Second game was ORJ Bill, and we had an awesome game. And I feel like I lost. I think it was round 5, 11-8. And I guess really, it was my first time getting a game this edition into Star Harden spam with Edard NCU. And
Oh, God.
it was my mistake. I guess I really thought 2 units into a unit of Berserkers, Hedge Knights and Rose Knights, with Sundering Critical Blow and Precision, and 2 Arses the Furies and multiple swords would break through that unit. And I was wrong. Between the healing and the hardened, I couldn't get through them. And by the time I realized I'd let myself get tar pitted, it was too late to get myself out of it. But that was an experience, and he's honestly a great player. So I mean, the loss doesn't hurt that bad. And I played a Night's Watch game against Gavin, who was an awesome kid. He knows his triggers, he knows his cards, and it was a Night's Watch list, and it was a Night's Watch list that was truly like elite, and it was kind of actually fun to play against when you kind of remove all of the things Othel brings. When it was just veteran, like playing just Rose Knights in isolation into veterans actually was kind of fun. You could go, oh, I can see how this could work, right? Like, I don't really care about Counter-Strike. It's proccing the heal and deal. And you could see how there are elements of the design that are good. There's just a few things that break the whole concept. So that was actually a particularly fun game, especially because he had such a great attitude. We had a good time playing together. And then my last game was against Calvin Lumley into Lannisters, which I'm very accustomed to playing with my friend Ryan. He played a Tywin list, and I played my Stannis list. And that game took a turn because Arses the Fury with Flayed Men one-shotted his Flayed Men.
No.
The one-shots have been reduced, but they exist. And Flayed Men charging on 2s with crit blow rerolls and Sundering and Intimidating Presence is definitely... Seeing someone's face when you one-shot their Flayed Men was, 1, I felt bad, but 2, it felt so good at the same time. So yeah, that was a great game, and that was my third win of the day. My one loss was to ORJ Bill. Both me and my buddy Ryan, actually. Both of our losses were to you and ORJ Bill at the top table. So we walked away feeling like, oh man, so close, but so far.
I gotta say, that's one thing I do kind of miss. I never thought I'd miss the one-shotting of units, but having that slight chance to come back in a game because you could get lucky and one-shot a unit is just, it was fun. Like it really was. And I mean, maybe not to be on the receiving end, but if you're running those armies that might be able to do that, it's fun. And that's one thing that I noticed about this tournament. We had a lot of games not finish in the time constraints, and that's part of the reason for it is you don't have those units to one shot anymore, and everything is more tanky, and there's so much more healing in the meta right now.
We'll definitely get into that, but Bob, you saying
right.
that you sort of miss units being one shot. I mean, I don't know if you forgot, because it's still fresh in my memory where you have Tully Cav coming into your unit with devastating impact and rolling 4 crits. That wasn't too fun.
No, I agree. I agree with that. I'm referring more towards being able to one shot by getting super lucky. You know what I mean? Yeah, that type of thing. Not the I'm gonna charge in with Berserkers and Brandon Hodor and get 3 hits and 3 extra hits, and I'm gonna panic you and do all this other stuff. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, getting lucky in it versus being dice average is 2 different conversations.
Exactly. Yes.
Or like really pouring resources into it. Like when I did it, it felt like set up and earned, and that's really satisfying. And I think that still exists.
Right.
Yeah, because like free folk and one-shot units, and it takes cards and digging through your deck and like setup and stuff. So like it does feel better.
So, before we get into how well you placed in the tournament, what unit or attachment or NCU do you think really did work for you in the tournament? Who was the MVP for you?
The MVP for me individually, it's probably Flayed Men. I want to say the Tactic card Overgrowth, because the Tactics card Overgrowth I think is the single most powerful thing Baratheon has. But I'm gonna say Flayed Men. Every game I was in that they were on the table, they killed at least 1.5 units. And I think Baratheon players, I keep saying passive hits, but the other thing is you're probably going to be out activated because your 8 act lists are either solo reliant or just not very good. So setting up a strike to, end of round charge something and take a huge chunk and take swords top of round to finish it is really what I think Baratheon players should be working towards. And Flayed Men let you do that.
And so, looking at the player standings here, it says that you came in 5th, but are we adding a little asterisk to that? Did I remember you saying that maybe you maybe recorded one of your matches incorrectly?
So my last game, it was 8-6, but he only had a unit of pyromancers left. I had killed everything, and I was like round 4, and he basically was like, "Yeah, like I can't win. Like, do you want to call it here?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's fine." But then he recorded the game, and I don't think it was intentional. I think it just got recorded as like an 8-6, like end of round 6 game, which was totally incidental. It was like round 4, I think, when the game ended. So I think that if I had gotten the secondary points from the concession, I asked Carlo to do the map, I would have been 3rd. And I only care because my friend Ryan took 3rd instead. So it's literally just now something for us to trash talk about when we play games.
Nice. And you did get some nice little shout outs in the last stats chat where they saw how you placed very high with Baratheons, and I will say I agree with them. You did very well.
Thanks. I mean, I had
so-
fun doing it. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, especially when you're just talking about how you were going to come get rolled by playing Baratheons beforehand.
So
Sorry,
that's my thing is I want to lower everyone's expectations. Like I want to really just lower your guard, lower your expectations, and then very quietly be competent. That's my goal.
All right, so Bob, let's get into your list. Let's see what you brought.
Yeah, we'll say something really quickly. Alex had 74 units destroyed, 74 points and units destroyed. The next highest person was 63, and he was playing Baratheons. Like that's crazy to me. Like that's really
To realize that
crazy to me.
Yeah, I had no idea. Oh,
They have builds, man. They're just few.
Mercy.
There's 2 of them.
All right, so you wanted me to get in my lists, or did you want me to talk about something else?
Yeah, let's just. I wouldn't mind just skipping you altogether. We'll get into my stuff.
Thanks, Chris.
No, come on,
Wow.
Bob. Hit us with those lists.
All right. I wanted to run Targs, and I did not want to run Dragons. So it goes hand in hand with why we banned Mother of Dragons. If I was going to be a person saying, "Hey, we're not allowing Mother of Dragons," then I'm not going to run Dragons at all. Period. That was just something that I decided to do. I did record one of my games wrong. It said I ran Queen of Marine every game, but I did run Jorah in my 3rd game. But my lists were Jorah. My first list was Jorah in Flayed Men. Both of my lists were kind of like neutral Targaryens. So I had Jorah in Flayed Men. I had 2 Dothraki Rockars, and I had a unit of Bolton Bastard Girls with an Unsullied Officer. I had Illyrio, Dany, and Tycho in that list as my NCUs. And my goal was to kind of just everything had Vicious. My goal was to have the Dothraki Rockars contest nodes since they can get there fast. They're a lot tankier than you would expect them to be because they'd save on a 4 and they have a 4 morale. So I know they only had 6 wounds. You have to play very careful with them. But it worked out for me. I ran that list in Clash of Kings, and they did outstanding for me, to be honest. My opponent was very surprised how well they did, and then the Bastard Girls. I mean, the goal with the Unsullied Officer in them is to shoot from long range. Again, Relentless was not melee only for Targaryens, but you're only rolling 4 dice, but it applies a vulnerable. So I roll the 4 dice, apply the vulnerable. Even if I don't deal a wound, my Flayed Men are still going to be charging a vulnerable unit, most likely. It's kind of like the old Sworn Brothers in 1.6 charging a vulnerable unit that the Ranger trackers put out. So I kind of took a book out of that old playstyle. My other list was Queen of Marine. I had Blackguard with the Queen of Marine, which is basically the standard spot that you would put her. I don't, maybe pikemen, but something coming to attack that unit at -4 morale when they're full rank, and -4 leadership at full rank, and taking an extra wound because of Danny is pretty sick. And then I had Solo Jorah. I had 2 Dothraki Outriders and a unit of Unsullied Pikemen. I had Illyrio, Peter Baelish, and Tycho. Peter mostly to control the crown when I needed it. That list, my goal was put the Blackguards and the Pikemen on nodes, and they're basically units that they don't want to attack because they're going to be taking hits back or damage back most likely, and use my Outriders to just run around the board and shoot and just wear things down. And obviously Illyrio and Tycho to heal. But you'll notice I did have Illyrio and Tycho in both lists. I really liked that healing, especially in the tanky list, especially with Flayed Men. So yeah, it went really well for me. I did go 4-0 and took second place. The biggest downside was I didn't kill a lot. I ran the Queen of Marine list 3 times and didn't really destroy many units.
So how did each round go for you? Who were your opponents, and maybe
Sure.
give some highlights of each match?
Yeah. Round 1, I played Dennis Duffy. That was, again, I ran Queen of Marine, he ran Tywin. It was both of us sitting on nodes getting points. I killed 7 points. He killed 0. That 1 point was the difference in the game because he had to come off of a node. It was honed and ready. I had Pikemen on the center node and Blackguard with Danny on one of the outer nodes because they weren't going to take much damage from the arrows. So that game was more of like a just grind it out type game. Second game I played against Starks. It was actually a Vargo Hote Stark match in Dance with Dragons. Again, that was another game mode that if you know these game modes, you can win them by playing the game mode. And it was Dance, and I had 2 tanky units, and you can grab a node and retreat and get further than you could if you're moving. So those are things that I use to my advantage, and I was able to pull that match out 12-7. Again, Targaryen supremacy is almost, in my opinion, almost stronger than Lannister supremacy on units because it's a surprise and you can't just avoid it. I had him come in and attack Blackguard, and I dealt 7 wounds from Targ supremacy. It was just gross. Yeah, it was nasty. Third game, I played Joe, Lannister player. Came in from New York. I know he was a good player. I was actually pretty nervous about this game. It was Clash of Kings. I ran my Jorah list, and he had Tywin in Warriors, or Gregor. I'm sorry, Gregor in Warrior Sons, and he ran them up the middle. And I kind of just made it so I just phased them out of the entire game. I acted like I was going to go towards them, and I knew how strong Warrior Sons are. And I kind of just, the army's so fast with the 2 Rockars, the Bastard Girls, and the Flayed Men that I could just act like I was doing something and go a completely different direction to a different attack a different unit, and that worked pretty darn well for me. And the Bastard Girls, I did have I think the Swift Sudden Retreat that helped me a lot. I was able to wipe out a unit of poor fellows on the side of the map after doing a sudden retreat, and I did a real good job keeping his Flayed Men engaged. If you can keep Flayed Men engaged, they aren't as nasty. That's one thing. And then last game I played was Feast for Crows. That was I kind of, again, I played it very gamey again. I ended up winning 11-8. I killed 0 points. He killed 13 again, and that all of these not destroying points and not getting higher amount of victories, it is what forced me in second place instead of first. not being able to destroy things. So that's something you do have to keep in mind when you're going to tournaments. You can't just you do have to destroy some units. If it's a 22 player tournament and you're only playing 4 rounds, there's going to be 2 people that are 4-0 at the end. It's impossible to avoid it. I'm pretty sure it's impossible to avoid it, at least statistically. But that game again was I threw pikemen up. I wasn't going to attack his units. He had 2 units with hardened and 1 unit that had Sirio in skirmishers. I wasn't going to attack them. I even didn't use set for charge because I didn't want to take hits back. So my goal was, let's just throw my.
Hang on, Bob. For those
yep.
who don't know, what is that unit? Because I experienced that unit. I played against that player. So for those who don't know that combo.
Yeah, so skirmishers are they have disrupt, so anything that's engaged with them suffers -1 to hit. And then Sirio he's the only one that when they changed agile to disrupt, Sirio was the only attachment that remained with agile. Agile is -1 to hit to anything attacking the unit, even ranged. So if you're and it stacks because it's a different skill. So if you're attacking that unit with a melee attack, if you have a 3 up hit, you're hitting at a 5. And every time you hit it, or every time you miss, it deals a hit back to you. And if they attack you first, you become weakened. So before you activate, that unit attacks you, you become weakened. So that's even another problem. So basically what I did was I just threw my pikemen up there and I'm like, okay, he can come after him. They're either going to live and I have more points on the board, or they're going to die and I'm going to get a corpse pile in the back of the board and Jorah can go on that and I can protect them. So basically that's what it was. I put stakes next to a corpse pile. I put Danny on them. He didn't go near them because he wouldn't have been able to go get them without stakes and taking horrific visage. And threw my pikemen out there and tried to keep them as alive as long as I could. As soon as they died, I put a corpse pile in the back and put Jorah on them and protected them with my outriders, who were way more resilient than I was expecting them to be. So yeah, it was fun. It was a different play style. I wasn't killing everything, wiping the board off like I've been doing a lot with my Night's Watch. So it was really fun and refreshing to me to play a different style of game, even if it did cost me secondary points and units destroyed.
And then you mentioned you saw the value of Targ Supremacy, but did you have any other standout like units or attachments or cards that really did well for you?
Subjugation of Power didn't really do too much for me against Starks. It did stop. I forgot Sirio has precision as well. I didn't mention that, but it did stop precision and the weakened tokens from going out from Sirio a couple times. The one thing I was really disappointed, I was not able to play the one card that was it Grim Reminders or Remorseful Reminders, something like that. The Queen of Marine card, the one where you put a corpse pile down when you kill a unit. I didn't get to play that once all day, and that was disappointing to me. But obviously, Counterplot and Subjugation of Power and Targ Supremacy just stood out the most to me. And the fact that no one wanted to attack that Blackguard unit, it was such a huge advantage.
Cool. All right, so we'll just get into my list, and I will throw out a disclaimer that although I did well at the tournament, these lists were more the list building consisted of what I wanted to paint. So I do like to mix it up when I'm playing in real life tournaments. First tournament I played was neutrals. I've also played Night's Watch in a tournament. I've played Starks, and I felt like tournaments for me are an excuse to get something painted. It's my motivation, and Lannisters were just sort of on my shelf, just waiting to be painted. So I had 2 weeks. I wanted to paint the coolest units, and so I made my list built around that. So the first one here, we have the High Sparrow. He is in a unit of halberdiers. I've also got 2 units of Naked Poorfellows, Stormcrow Archers, and Warrior Sons with a Champion of the Faith. My NCUs were Pycelle, Peter Baelish, and big surprise here, I've got Tycho. Second list, which is what I consider my favorite out of the 2, is Tywin. Tywin is in a unit of Halberdiers. I've also got a unit of Naked Poorfellows. I've got the Mountain That Rides. I've got Red Cloaks and Flayed Men. And you'll notice that even though I'm running Red Cloaks, I'm not running Joffrey. Instead, I'm running Pycelle, the High Sparrow, and Peter Baelish. The reason why I'm not running Joffrey is because I'm only running 1 unit of Red Cloaks. Again, I really wanted to paint them, so that's why I sort of just found a way to fit them into this list. But Peter, I think if you play him right with the Red Cloaks and you're able to use his one-time ability to control the crown, I feel like that's enough to have a tempo swing if you're able to maybe take out a unit or really cripple it after a panic test. Then going into my games. Oh, before I get into that, Alex had mentioned that he saw one of the game modes. Said that he saw that Honed and Ready was a part of the collection of game modes that were going to be available at the tournament, and he knew what list he would be bringing to that. For those who are sort of new to tournaments or are looking for some advice on how to do well, that's one of the things I would suggest is take a look if the organizers have released the list of game modes and really consider when you're building, what kind of units would do well in that type of game mode. And that's why I played Tywin a lot in this tournament, was because Tywin can sit in a defensive unit like Halberdiers if it's a game mode like Honed and Ready, where he's maybe sitting in the backfield. He has a card issue commands that you're able to sort of get the activation back, even though he probably won't be seeing much action that game. So first game, as Alex mentioned, I played his buddy Ryan. And to be honest, I was very worried because it was a Lannister mirror. And although I felt pretty comfortable in any other matchup, I felt like his lists were similar to mine, and it was all going to be dependent on who rolled better. Maybe who either got the really impressive attack and took out the first unit, or whoever failed the first counterplot. It was all going to teeter upon that single dice roll that was just going to swing the game. If you watch the match, I did record some matches, so you guys can look forward to some battle reports from that day. But if you watch the match, you'll notice that although Ryan was winning on the board, I walked away with the win just because I was able to secure points with my commander throughout the game, and he was not able to. He sort of made the mistake of taking the center objective in Honed and Ready with his Warrior Sons and left his commander sort of high and dry without any points to score. So he sort of blocked himself out of scoring, basically. And it was a very, very close match. I didn't use the NCUs to rain down arrows on his units, but he was constantly doing it to Tywin. And Tywin just he was able to survive. I think he had Tywin down to 1 wound left after raining down arrows twice in a round. So it was a very close game. Shout out to Ryan. He's a very good player, and it was a very enjoyable match. A second match, I played my High Sparrow list into Greyjoys, and because the reason why I took the High Sparrow was because I had the Stormcrow Archers in it, and I noticed that it was probably going to be the only way I was able to sort of pin down ranks or take down ranks from his Greyjoy army. I was lucky and was able to take out his commander's unit. He had Asha and Bowman, and they crumpled in the beginning of round 2 because I was able to attack round 1. The archers, and then I attacked him again. I rolled well. He did not. And so, I was able to win that fairly easily. Again, a really good player. I enjoyed that match against him, and he took the loss in strides. I felt like he was just testing the waters with Greyjoys, and I'm sure once he gets a few more matches in, he'll be a lot better. My third match was with Adam out of Buffalo. I believe he played you as well. He's the guy that had the Stark army with Sirio and.
Yep. I played him last round. You played him right before me, so you got to experience both of us.
Yeah, yeah. So he had the combo that we were talking about earlier of Sirio and skirmishers, and I got really lucky during this game. I'm going to admit it. I was worried because he put that unit right in the center, contesting where I put my commander's unit. So it was basically a race to the center. He got there first, and unless I did something, my commander was not going to be scoring points at all that game. And so what I had to do was I had to attack that unit, even though I didn't want to. And I took my flayed men in. Because of the nasty combo, they were hitting on 5s. Flayed men had, I think, 4 crits and hit all but 1. So if they didn't get one shot that game, they were pretty close.
Yeah, man, that's just more reason to reroll for crits. You don't fish for them in other armies, but in that one, you don't have a choice.
Right. So he was pretty surprised that I rolled that well. I was surprised because if you guys watch my battle reports, I do not roll like that on camera. So the game all swung on that attack, because if I weren't able to get that unit off the center objective, I would have lost that match. Still very close, but I ended up winning that match. And then I played ORJ Bill top table for the final match. You guys have seen ORJ Bill on my channel before. We played in the last tournament together. I was playing Starks, he was playing neutrals, but this time he brought Starks. Alex mentioned that he's got the Berserker combo with the Mormont Veteran. And I decided to bring my tanky list, which was the High Sparrow list. Was very unfortunate, and it almost felt like a hollow win for me, because I did win the tournament. I beat Bill. It ended due to time, and I think a lot of that has to do with the type of list that we brought to that game. Nothing was dying, because if you look at how games usually play out, especially in 1.6, if once units start dying, rounds go faster. That's less activations that you have. But nothing was dying. I killed 1 unit that game, and it was Shaggy Dog. Game ended at the end of round 3. Like I said, it went to time, and I won 3-2. I can't express enough how much I enjoy playing against Bill. He's a very, very good player. I know that some of you guys on the podcast have already mentioned that. So, it was a very tough match. It was a very tough tournament. All my opponents were awesome. I had a blast. I just wish that the tournament would have, more have ended in a bang rather than a whimper, the way it did. But I'm still gracious for the win. So yeah, that was
First tourney win, right, Chris?
Yeah, first tourney win. Yeah, and a lot had to do with luck, I will admit, but I'm not going to complain. It was very nice to have that feeling of winning. Bob, you felt that enough.
I mean, I kind of went into this with this different style of play because I'm like, maybe I'll let Chris win. I'm just kidding.
It was neck and neck, right? Because you were the TO, so you were entering in all the matches after every round. So you knew after everyone submitted their match who won. But
I knew I needed a table, and you get a minor win for me, or Bill get a minor win for me to win the tournament. But I knew there was no way in hell I was tabling that Stark list. So I just went for the undefeated.
Right. All right, let's circle back, Alex. How do you think the event itself went? I mean, I would hope that you and your friends enjoyed yourselves, but I sure did enjoy having you guys come play with us. So
I loved
Oh,
it.
real quick,
I'm look.
okay,
Go ahead.
sorry, before we get to that, I wanted to say Chris won this tournament, and the prize was a Greyjoy starter and Heroes box. Um, I also want to give a shout out to Calvin Lumley for donating that Heroes box. That was really cool of him. He paid an entry fee and still donated a prize. But Chris won, and he pulled me aside and he goes, I already have this. What if I give it to the father and son that came and played? And I go, dude, they're the before the tournament started, he told me that's the only faction they don't own. And I was like, that'd be one of the coolest things if you did that, because they're gonna go play that together. And I loved doing. I did baseball with my dad when I was younger, and you were talking about how you did stuff with your dad too. So that was really freaking cool of you to do that. You got a round of applause from everyone for doing that. So good guy, Chris. Thank you for doing that. That was really cool, man. That was pretty awesome.
all right, enough about me, Alex. Back to you. What do you think, man?
Glad, and that was a highlight of the event, by the way. But we loved it, and frankly, the whole ride home, we were talking about how much we're looking forward to the next one. I was telling you guys very seriously that in the next month or two, I'd love to come out on a random Sunday just for a game day, just to play different people. That was the amount of fun we had in the environment. The atmosphere of that store is awesome. Everyone was super nice, and it was the perfect kind of competitive where everyone's definitely having a good time, but still taking the game pretty serious. Serious, not in a ridiculous way, but in a way that we're all here trying to win, and that's what's fun. But without really breeding any conflict, I would say it was an awesome event. And if you guys have more in the near future, you can expect me to be there.
All right, Bob. What do you think as the TO? You had a unique perspective of how things went. I know that you were dealing with a lot, so I have to say thank you, Bob, for putting up with all of us as players and promoting the event, TOing the event. Yeah, so thank you first off. But what were your sort of final thoughts?
First of all, don't be a crazy man and or woman and TO and play in a tournament. Take note. It's tough. It's really hard. The stats site helps a ton with that. It made it so much easier. Next time, I would probably train the players on how to enter their matches themselves, and that would make it even easier. But I thought overall it was pretty awesome. I didn't have a single person come to me complaining about another player. I barely had any rules questions to answer. Most people probably figured them out on their own. It was pretty awesome. I think everyone was pretty happy. Even the person who finished in last place, you might think, oh, you always give the best sportsmanship to the last place player, but that dude lost. He didn't play. He didn't win a single game, but he came up every time talking about how much fun he's having and how great the event was. It was just really cool. And I don't know if that had to do with the bans we put in place or just the top quality notch attitudes of the players. But there was no arguments, nothing. I don't think it could have been more of a success other than what you said, having more time for games. That's one thing that I even talked to Carl from West Coast Bannerman about. He asked how long we gave. We gave an hour and a half per game, which is the recommended length by the tourney doc. And in this version, it just doesn't seem like enough. But it's hard to make it go longer with everyone coming from out of town, especially on a Sunday. But overall, it was an awesome tournament. It was really fun.
And I've said everything I can say about the tournament. I had a great time, but I want to open it up to Stefan, who is in chat right now. He is a patron, and he also competed in the tournament as Night's Watch. So I just wanted to hear another perspective of someone who played in the tournament and what how it was for them.
It was pretty cool, man. Look, I can hear the booze raining down from people saying Night's Watch. So, no, I mean, it was cool. I mean, we had a fun time. Everybody had. There's no real conflict other than the time limits. It was really good. I had awesome games. I played against the guy from Michigan first. That came with OrJ Bill. And then played Tim as my last game, which was probably my funnest game, one of our locals. And it was really fun.
Awesome. And I'm still glad that someone did bring Night's Watch, even though we implemented the bans. You were able to bring a stone thrower. How was running the stone thrower?
It was. I wish I would have ran it again, but it was fun. It was fun to stick something in the back and just roll dice and see what happened. I think I only missed once with it the whole game I played it with, so that was cool.
Nice. Cool. Thanks, Stefan, for hopping in there and giving your thoughts on how the tournament went for you. We are approaching the hour and 15 mark. I usually try to keep these, within the hour to hour and a half. But just want to maybe some closing notes here. Again, I recorded a few matches, so definitely stay tuned for those videos coming out on the channel. We are also I think I'm the only one from my gaming group that is going to Indianapolis for the quote-unquote nationals at Family Time Games. So we'll be recording matches out there. Charles, you're not going to that, are you?
No, not in the short notice. I mean, I'm spoken my piece about nationals, but I do want it to be a good tournament. So if any of you guys are in that area and are available for Labor Day weekend and want to go and support that store and play in a tournament, like, you should support it. Like, I want tournaments to be successful. So, like, if you got time and you're motivated, swing through. But unfortunately, I can't make that.
Yeah, no, totally understand. And I would also assume that Alex, you're not going. I don't think Bob is going either, right?
No, it's the same thing. It's too hard to get off work just that quickly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I can't attend either. Labor Day weekend, we always plan stuff with family and friends. So it's I don't know how many other people do that, but I know a lot of people that plan things for Labor Day weekend. So that was a tough weekend to just get out of town, and keep my wife,
Yeah. Please, Simon, give us a little bit more time to plan for something like that.
Yeah. But another shout out though, was it Rocket City out of Alabama that had a tournament a couple months ago have already announced their hope for a quarterly tournament in October. So if you're in the Gulf South, I'm hoping COVID clears up a bit by October so I can make that event. And then I'm also planning for LVO in January, assuming COVID kind of gets its act together.
Did you get your ticket? Because Bob and I got ours.
I bought mine for the event just to reserve it because worst case you can get credit back for next year.
I need to get my event ticket. I bought the tourney ticket.
Yeah, I bought the tourney ticket because that was the thing that's more the limited thing. LVO itself sells plenty of tickets.
It's going to be a fun event. I know that Ariakis / Clarence will be there. Bob and I have our tickets. I would love to finally meet Charles in person.
Yeah,
and LVO. So.
Yeah, I think Carl is going to be there too, I think, from Cali, and a lot of the voices we hear a lot on the internet for this game. We're going to hopefully make that one, so it should be a bit of a who's who for North American meta, especially with the Canadians coming down, which I'm super excited for because Ariakis is a hell of a player, and so is anybody he brings with him. So that could make for a spicy tournament, really.
That's going to be a great time.
For sure.
And then lastly, NRG is wrapping up. TTS tournament put on by the Stats guys. My tournament is sadly over. I played Craig Gruce, otherwise known as Gruce. He beat me yesterday, so I am no longer in contention for best in faction. I believe that will be going to Blood Raven. Blood Raven is playing you top table, right, Bob?
Who's Bob? Yeah. Yeah. I got my Night's watch list. I still don't know which list I'm running yet.
I know. Can I tell the audience?
Nope, you cannot tell the audience because I might change my mind still. I think I have a good game plan going into it, so we'll see. Hopefully, I can pull it off. I know his Tyrion list is built to play against Night's Watch, and I know it's very, very hard to kill Warrior Sons, especially with Tycho in that list too. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, I can pull this one out. I'm tired of coming in second place or losing in the finals of tournaments. So,
well, good luck. We'll all be rooting for you. Hopefully, they'll stream the match. I would think they are.
I
But
think it'll be Monday at either noon or 1 Eastern.
okay, stay tuned for that. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the closing shout outs. And I'm going to start it off this time with Charles. Who you shouting out this week?
I got a quick couple of them. One, it's mostly gonna be all the haters. We have the FAQ and the forums going since our last podcast, which is great. And I'm pretty sure I'm like 8 for 8 for being right on big questions and rulings. So for everybody who said that tournament players are ruining the game and we're trying to force our own rulings, suck it. And two, the Gamers Haven tournament was stacked. Like you've got your tournament was, had a ban list. I mentioned by very competitive. You guys had 3 top 15 players in that tournament. 'Cause I forgot that Schmucken was a Stark player. Who's kind of new to the scene. He broke the top 10 earlier in the season on stats. Bob's in
Schmucken is no
7th.
joke.
You're at 11th. You were a top 10 for a lot of the season. And you had like 4 or 5 different states show up. Like that is massive for the event. And like that's a bragging rights tournament, even with a modified like list selection, right? Like that's like when we say like there's modified events for the Australians, but that's a Shark Tank of players. As far as North America goes, or like US specifically goes, it's about as competitive as it gets in the US at the moment, right? Like you had 3 top 15 players in the world per stats. Like that's a lot. Like that's a rough gamut to run, even in a casual setting. So like props to you guys for a good tournament, and again to all the haters out there who say TTS tournament players are ruining the game. 22 people, a great turnout, banning NPE things voluntarily, and still having 3 top 15 players come in and play, and everybody had a ball. Like that flips the narrative, in my opinion, or should. And I'm super proud of you guys.
Thanks, dude. All right, I'm going to move it on to Bob.
I just want to give a shout out to everyone who ventured in. Last November we had 20, and that was kind of like still early on, I guess we would say, with COVID and stuff. And we had a great turnout, even with everyone wearing masks and everything. There was 20 players then. We got 22. We actually had 26 signed up. 4 ended up dropping out. That's another thing to turn TOs. Allow extras to sign up because people will drop out at the last minute. So we did have 4 drop out at the last minute. Hopefully they can make it to the next one. And hopefully the next one, the goal is to have a Gamers Haven tournament where we have to rent a hall at a hotel or something and rent tables and get 50 people at it. That'd be awesome. So
that'd be rad.
Yeah, so we're going to try to plan another one. We want to try to do these quarterly. But yeah, shout out to everyone who came to that, and to you, Chris, for pulling out the win this time too.
Thanks, man. All right, Alex. Now's your time to sort of give your shout out. If you want to also talk about your own local scene. For it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking I'd like to do, actually. Because we are trying to get more games going in Pittsburgh, and I think there's a lot of momentum right now. First shout out, Drawbridge Games has a game day every single Sunday every Sunday, last Sunday of the month for Song. And I'm actually hosting a small tournament there, the 29th, with a 14-player cap. We're about at 8 or 9 right now. Then also, I want to give a specific shout out to Ian, Custodes for Life of the main Discord, at Fabricators Forge. He's doing an awesome job of building this game in the area. I think Simon needs to show him some more love, frankly, in terms of prize support. And he's doing a great job of, getting new players to play, running the demo games, getting them to show up for his events, bringing interesting and fun themes to those events. For example, he's got an event coming up September the 25th, and it's a Chimera event. So it's a 3-round tournament, and you have to bring 3 lists with 3 different commanders. None of those commanders can appear as an attachment or NCU in your other lists, and each has to be used once. So he's just doing a lot of cool stuff that's mixing it up and kind of makes every monthly tournament feel like an event, a separate event.
Rad. That's
Yeah,
super cool.
so I definitely, if you guys can make it down for one, I think he's doing some cool stuff, and we're getting pretty consistently over 10 to 12 players every month, and then I think he's going to be able to keep growing it. So shout out to him for putting in that work.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, we definitely want to make it there for a tourney sometime. So keep updating us. You're in our local Discord as well. So let us know about these tournaments for sure.
For sure. The only thing I'll tell you is they'd use some different terrain rules. They use 5 pieces from a pool at each table. So there's set terrain options at each table, which actually kind of mixes it up further.
Fine with that. Anything that mixes up the game for me is always a plus. So yeah, we'll definitely try to make it down there for that.
Cool. I hope you do.
Then my shout outs, hopefully you guys aren't tired of hearing, shout out to everyone that came to the tournament. We had some really, really good players, but also some really, really just awesome people in general. It was, it looked like everyone was having a lot of fun, and that's what's most important for the community. So shout out to everyone who came. Also shout out to all 4 of my opponents, ORJ Bill, Adam from Buffalo, Andrew from Buffalo, and Ryan from Pittsburgh, Alex's friend. Really great opponents. And then, like always, thank you guys, the patrons. It's because of you I'm able to make these battle reports, record this podcast. I just can't thank you enough. And stay tuned. These videos are coming out. If you guys enjoy competitive matches, I recorded a few from the tournament, and then stay tuned for our regular battle reports. I have one that was already shot. It's me versus Stefan. It's a Greyjoy match. He brought Euron. I brought Tywin. So that's a battle report that's going to be coming out pretty soon. And then you can definitely look forward to seeing videos from Nationals in Indianapolis. That tournament is the weekend of Labor Day, September 4th, 5th, I believe. Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff happening, and thank you guys. Thank you to Weasel, my co-host. Thank you to Bob for making a rare appearance, and thank you to our special guest Alex, aka Bored to Death. And with that, we are out.